I'm a black business owner, but me being called a black business owner has only happened when I'm talking to other black people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting. You know, here you're just a business owner.
Welcome to the Melanated Files. In this series, we highlight and share the stories of black people from across the globe. Remember to subscribe to this channel for weekly videos and also follow us on social media for regular updates. Let's get into the interview.
I don't know why, but I can't seem to get you off my mind. And I know it's true, and I'll say this to you, I want you back. There's something inside, yeah, there's something inside that brings me back to you, yeah. No, I can't hide it, no, I can't hide it anymore. Something inside, something inside. Whoa, yeah.
Welcome to another episode of the Melanated Files. My name is Ranzo, and today we're joined by William Gilchrist. He is the CEO of KONSYG right here in Singapore. We are going to get into his story right now. William, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot for having me, man. It's great.
I appreciate it.
It's awesome.
All right, so I want you to introduce yourself to the world. Tell them who you are.
Well, my name is William Gilchrist, from Chicago, Illinois originally. Been in Asia for over a decade, originally in China, and then moved down to Singapore, sunny Singapore, and worked in the tech space in large corporates and startups for a few years, and now I run KONSYG Private Limited, headquartered here in Singapore.
All right.
Sales is really based on what conversation are you really having? Are you really selling something that matters, right? Similar to the value piece. So real quick, all right, let's just say, it's gonna take literally 2 minutes. All right, imagine this is a half-drunk glass of water, right? Now, I didn't brush my teeth this morning, I had burrito, there's just all this grit in my mouth, it's disgusting. And I just drank the water like this. All right, sell that. Sell that water to me.
It's organic. Wow. It's natural. It's not avian. It's refreshing. Like when you get up in the morning, and you got that morning bread. It's refreshing. It's quench your thirst.
Awesome, okay, good. So what you said there, is it refreshing? Is that half-drunk glass of water with my burrito breath refreshing? No, honestly, is it? No, it's not.
No.
You lied. You did exactly what every person does when they judge the product, right? Because you're not really selling there, you're lying. Sales is different. I could sell you that exact same glass of water for $2,000, easily. And the reason why I can't do it right now is because we're in an air-conditioned place. There's plenty of water here. You're in Singapore. You don't have to worry about water. But if you came out of the Sahara Desert and I sat there with your little DBS app and I stood right there and I said, hey, you know what? I don't have much water, but I got this half-drunk glass of water, my burrito breath. All it is $2,000. That conversation changes, doesn't it? Pain, right? It's a realer conversation. So what are the business pains? So remote sales is training people the art of having fun with that, right? Understanding the tactics in order to engage cultures, to engage pain, to be able to really generate real revenue out of people, to predict conversion. That's what's fun. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting in Botswana or you're sitting in an office. Learn the art form of sales, the art form of a conversation. Everybody thinks salespeople are liars. We're not, actually. We're really not. We're scum. We're alcoholics, but we're not. If you really focus on the art form of sales, because a lot of people sell. You can be selling, but are you a saleswoman? Are you a salesman? That's a different game. And that's how you can sell multiple products the right way, right? So remote working or not, my team is into the art form of sales. It's fun for us, right? And that water example is how you do it.
So we want to get the backstory a bit, right? Because you told me about, how you started out. You went to China when you were 13, right?
Yeah.
As like a student ambassador. So we want to like go down memory lane and bring us all the way back up to present day Singapore.
Okay. Well, I think it all starts with my mother for sure, and my father. So it's fascinating because my dad is superintendent of schools for Chicago, and my mom's a children's book author, illustrator, and a fine artist. So she was big on travel when I was born. I mean, it was all about. She put me in violin class, learning French, and we would go to art galleries and stuff like that, all the time. And every year we'd have to go somewhere. We'd have to go to either whether it be Canada or whether it be Europe and Latin America.
Jamaica,
so every year,
no?
actually, we would go into the islands, right? But we did stop by Jamaica. But I don't want to sound like a poser. We did do it on like a cruise. I'm kind of faking, but so. We would always travel every year, and I really got that kind of travel bug when I was younger. And I remember when I was 9 years old, I was really fascinated with. Before I was 9, I was always reading the World Book, right? For the encyclopedia now it's Google and stuff like that, but the encyclopedia was the thing back then. So my mom had bought the Britannica Encyclopedia World Book Britannica, and I would just flip through these pages, and I would just be seeing all these different cultures, places, ideas, animals, all this stuff, and I became obsessed with the China one. And I think the reason why I became obsessed with the China part of the encyclopedia is because the C and the CH were 2 books, so China spilled over into 2 books. So I was always fascinated, I was reading all these things about China, so then I remember being 9 years old and putting on my Christmas list, Mom, like, I want to go to China. Can Santa give me a trip to China when I was 9? And my mom kind of laughed it off, and I was like, you'll probably get like a PlayStation, maybe not a trip to China. I was like, okay, a PlayStation will do, but every year I'm just gonna put a trip to China on. And a few years later, my wish came true, and someone had pretty much nominated me for a student ambassador program. So I was 13 years old and was able to go to China and be there alone without my parents for a year when I was 13. So that was like a big piece of my life.
What was that like, being in China at 13? Like,
I mean, back then, so it was, I'm giving up my age here, it was 97, so it was when Hong Kong was returning to Chinese rule. So right now it's interesting that you're seeing what's going on in the news now, and it's actually part of my life because I was there when that transition happened. I was in Beijing. So during the whole ceremony and everything. Being in China during that time was fascinating because I think it was a bit of an unassuming place at the time. The media hype around China hadn't really took off yet. Right? I was into China long before I think The Economist and the New York Times were talking about the great opportunity of China. I think I was interested in China long before that, which is probably why I had like a real interest into it. It's not for business purposes or for social media posts. I mean, I was into it long before there was social media. It was just a fascinating culture with a rich history and not really big on the Western hype part of it all. So kind of going over there at that time at 13, it was very real. It was before all of that. It was before all of the hype. I mean, China was just a place with a lot of history, but no one really, and also it was a place that exported a lot of goods to America. So the perception of China at that point was, all of my stuff is made there. Not
made in China. I remember that time.
The made in China thing was like a thing when I was there. Not the tech powerhouse, the government powerhouse, all the things that we know China to be now as the norm actually wasn't the norm then, which made it really cool as a kid. And I got to live I lived in a village in Wuhan for a while. So there was a lot of like different experiences. So I got to see different types of China as well. The urban plus the rural plus kind of the political piece, because we were there visiting like different, parts of parliament and all that. So that in itself was unique. I mean, it was a really vast place.
Okay, so that was your first stint. Well, I guess not a stint. I'm like, a year's a long time at 13 to be in China, right? So you moved fast forward. You said you went back to China. Was it for your master's?
Yeah, so I went to grad school in
Okay.
in Beijing University. So, well, originally I went to undergrad at Bowdoin College,
Okay.
and I majored in international relations, minored in Chinese politics.
Okay.
So I had spent 4 years pretty much writing papers about China, hypothetical wars between the U.S. and China, what it would be on, all this theory, watching a lot of Frontline, reading a lot of, back then it was TPM Cafe, which is international relations blog, and people would argue on the blog, and all this theory stuff. But I felt kind of fake because I had never actually, as an adult, lived in a Chinese environment as an adult, right? And so all 4 years I wrote these papers, and it was just theory. And when I graduated, I said, all right, well, let me feel this. I've wrote a lot of theory. Let me actually take a second, pause myself, and actually feel what it's like to be in China. So when I graduated, all my friends went to go into the banking world, Lehman Brothers, see how that worked out. And I ended up taking a teaching role, teaching public school in Shanghai.
Okay.
And
okay. So you went to, so that's what you did after college, right?
Right after college. I graduated. I remember getting my diploma, and then 2 weeks later I was on a plane actually to Zhuhai because we had to get our certification to teach. So I lived in Zhuhai for 6 months.
Okay.
And then we went up to Shanghai, and we were in Shanghai teaching public school. I mean, bad kids, good kids, great kids, fun kids, candy. I mean, the whole shebang, right? Literally public school.
Yeah.
I was just any other teacher there, and that was a great experience.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I ended up in China. And then going into school kind of came later. So while I was living in China for a while, I ended up taking up a graduate diploma at Beijing University.
Okay.
So
what was the experience like, the black experience in China at that time?
the black experience in China, I mean,
Did you feel like an outsider there, or as you said, you felt like you were like another teacher, pretty much?
I mean, I think that in China, China's very upfront and very honest about highlighting your difference. Yeah, but it's not meant to be offensive or anything. I don't think it's not like anything negative. But you might hear, some really direct comments.
Like what, for instance?
Well, I would say that before I learned Chinese, the comments were more along the lines of, "Oh wow, your skin, it's different. It's beautiful." Where like there's like a weird like pause between the words. And you're kind of like, where was that really going? What did you really mean by that? I don't know. But it's not offensive really. But you're just kind of like, okay, you're really taking a point to notify. But then right after that, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing I have to say about China and about Asia in general, my experience is that the blood isn't really in the sand here from a historical standpoint. So a lot of the comments, or maybe let's say statements that are made related to black people, I think there's not much historical context as to what it could mean to that person. Like they probably wouldn't even realize that things could be hurtful or offensive because there was no civil rights movement for black people here. There wasn't a need for it. It didn't happen here, right?
Yeah.
So what might be like, commenting on someone's tone or complexion. That's a delicate and very, you have to be kind of a professional linguist to have a complexion conversation in America. So that comes from the historical context where like in Asia or in China, they'll just say it like, "Oh, you're really dark." And you're kind of like, well, it takes you back from it like, okay, that's not a problem. I like being dark, but the way you said that was so direct that you're like, whoa. But then you realize, oh, you're just telling the truth. And that's not, you're just, there's no issue there. There's no underlying
malicious
point
intent.
there where like, the concept of saying, light, dark in the States, it comes with a zinger or something else behind it where, you're meant to feel a certain type of way about it, where in Asia, there is no historical context, so you don't have the same kind of building blocks behind it.
Okay, so a lot of people that I've spoken to throughout Asia talk about the safety aspect, right? When they move from where they resided or their homeland to Asia, they're like, I feel safe. There's like this difference, it's like a different environment altogether. It is, but the element of being profiled by the police to a certain extent and different things. They're like they don't feel that the weight is not here. Do you concur with that, or how do you feel about that?
I've never had an experience like that at all in Asia.
No, I mean
know-
it's not here, but they're saying coming here is safe.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference. There's a big difference between like the States, for instance, and here.
I mean, I would say there's a huge difference between the energy for sure, right? Like being from Chicago, it's a different element. You know, it's a different element. But there are also different realities that I have to think about being in that element as well. Like for me, how I exist in the States, I don't really put myself in a position to kind of have a lot of those uncomfortable conversations or situations. I mean, I'm in the suburbs, or I'm going to work, I'm coming back. You know, it can happen any time, those challenges, but I try to reduce my percentages as much as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not outside like that, you know.
Yeah.
I try to make sure that I have a purpose. I'm walking with a purpose. I'm going somewhere with a purpose. So, but the energy is definitely there in the States that doesn't exist here. I mean, walking into a store, and the assumption isn't anything questionable,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm assumed to be a bad guy going to the store in the States, but there is a certain question mark that exists, I think, in the States as a black man going to a store or driving a car or whatever, versus out here where it doesn't apply. You're just foreign.
Yeah.
And that's what makes things actually interesting, because being foreign is quite good for a black person from America, because you're like, oh man, well at least I just get that label, versus the follow-up assumptions of anything negative.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so fast forward.
Yep.
So you were teaching in China, and then you decided to get your master's, right? Was it in Chinese?
It was in Chinese. So I went to Beijing University. So originally it was through Cornell. So I went to Beijing University, and we finished out our program there in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said at the time you got your master's degree, it was around the time when the market was collapsing, all that was going on.
We got our diploma, 2008. It was the Olympics, and the markets were crashing at that time.
Yeah.
And right around that time, we got our diploma, and they said, okay, well, you got to go. If you don't have a job already set up in China, there's really, you have like practically, you need to pack up and figure out someplace else to go, because we got to set up for the Olympics. So I ended up moving back to the States for a year. And so that was weird, having like, you know, a graduate degree from Beijing University and Cornell, focusing on Chinese, and then from there having to go back to the States and sit in my old high school in Chicago, which was great, but it was definitely a world shift. I was able to see like a duality of the world, seeing all this and then coming back to kind of my high school years, which is fascinating, you know.
But I think you had, from what you articulated earlier, I think you had a positive impact on the students there.
Oh, so, I mean, it was super positive in terms of what it was.
Yeah.
But just the stark differences between what I had seen and then where I was, it was fascinating. I was like, wow, you know, and I remember just saying it in the school, the world is huge, guys. Like, it's huge. You don't understand. Like, yeah, I felt like I was just this person who came back from like a different planet, being like, no, it's out there. It's mega, you know? So it was excellent to kind of go back. And I think that it was kind of the universe like telling me, you need to go back. You need to go back to, you know, your high school years. You need to almost kind of look at yourself. Because those boys, I mean, the school's it's an all black male Catholic high school in Chicago. It's historical. Hail Franciscan. Go Spartans. But, you know, I felt like all my Asia experience, all the education, all of that stuff, coming back to that high school, it was like the universe saying, you need to go look back in the mirror at yourself. Look at kind of where you came from. Look at these boys. These boys are you.
Yeah.
You got to talk to them and tell them, hey, look, this is everything that I saw. Here's an easier way to go about doing it. I mean, as director of admissions and also college planning, I was in charge of bringing students into the school, but also in charge of placing them in the college. So it was a very interesting position where I was talking to the youngest in the school, but also the oldest in the school at the exact same time. So that in itself was unique. And I really do think that was kind of like a cosmic thing to say, now you've seen Asia, right? You've seen the world.
Yeah.
You've been to, you know, 100 plus countries at that time.
Wow.
Go to your high school, and look at yourself in the same uniform that you were in right before you kind of went on that journey.
Yeah.
So it's quite poetic.
Yeah, I think so. I think you were sent back there to impart, deposit some things that you learned before you went on your journey.
Yeah.
Right.
It was fascinating, very poetic.
So you did 1 year back in the States, right? And then from that, was it Singapore? Your next destination?
Yes. So I actually I was working in school, and I decided to touch Asia again. I said, look, this is me. I mean, I've done my time in my old high school. It's been great. Some of the students are graduating, placed in the good colleges. So I said, okay, well, I want to go back on my journey. And China was a bit too difficult to get back to.
Okay.
So I ended up taking a unpaid internship here in Singapore for a lead generation marketing company.
Okay.
So that was kind of the start of my sales career, I guess you could say, where I just had a headset and a list to call from. Actually, my first job here was to take a stack of business cards and put it into an Excel sheet format.
Okay.
I'll never forget that. And actually,
Tedious, right?
He's still my mentor to this day.
Oh, wow.
But my boss at the time, I remember the first words he said to me, I mean, not even hi, because someone had given me the stack of cards, and he walks in and he looks at me, he looks down at the business cards and the Excel sheet, and he goes, got the fun stuff. And it walks out. That's the first thing he said. This is my welcome to Singapore, right? Like a stack of business cards and a computer to type it in.
Yeah.
So took an unpaid internship and did that for about a year.
Okay.
I worked unpaid for about 3 months, and
Okay.
then I ended up being a full-time employee for that company
Okay.
for a year. And then
You did a good job with those business cards.
yeah, you know. Well, I graduated from the business cards to a headset to actually start calling.
Okay.
Right. Once I had the headset and the actual phone number, I said, "Wow, I can actually." You gonna trust me to do this? This is great. So I ended up doing outbound cold calling for. We're an outsourced company that would do outbound cold calling, lead generation. So for your IBMs of the world, your Adobes and stuff like that. So I did that for a year, where I was making 100 to 120 cold calls a day.
Oh wow.
You know, not easy
pretty
stuff.
good, right?
Not easy stuff, man.
It's we
a
got pretty
grinder.
good.
It's a grinder. Yeah, I mean, well, you have to get good at that. After a while, you make so many calls at odd hours and stuff like that eventually you just get a rhythm.
Yeah.
And then, it's probably the hardest but most valuable job I've ever had, like in skill set. The skill set that you get from being a cold caller is actually priceless.
Yeah.
It carries me to this day. I mean, I have a company based on that experience. So, I mean, the company I run now, one of the key things I tell all of my staff is cold calling, and it's all from that first job.
Yeah.
Doing that hard work, I know how valuable it was, because you can always do something if you have that ability to connect with people.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, did that for a year, and then I got picked up by Google. So I worked in Google on the sales team for about 3.5 years, and then for 1 year I was actually head of knowledge for ETO, which is it was a specific portion of Google, where I was setting up vendor teams across Asia Pacific and actually really global.
Okay.
So that was a very interesting space, because I took my kind of sales background, but then I had to be more strategic in terms of how to apply a sales reality into certain regions. Which
So you're
was really
selling
interesting.
primarily Google products, right?
Google products, yeah. I mean, whether it be mostly advertising like AdWords, stuff like that, but also your YouTubes and so now we're on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So
Hey,
all the the banners and maybe that banner up there, you sell that. So that was the main thing.
Okay, so you did Google, and then you moved to your own company, right? So before even we go into like your own startup, talk to us about the experience at Google. And I think you said you did some other startups before you moved on your own.
Yeah, so it was actually a very interesting combination of events. I think had I not done it in this sequential order, I wouldn't have been able to start KONSYG.
Okay.
So the first lead generation marketing company, that was the first opportunity where I learned the cold calling and learned like really being a proper salesperson. Google taught me to dream, right? It's a dream place, right? So no idea is too crazy. You can go as far as you want to go. Everybody will take it seriously, right? You can say, look, I think I want to make a spaceship out of a straw.
Yeah.
They're like, really? You think you can do that? Okay, well, how would you do? And you're like, you're taking me seriously. Like, guys, like, oh, no, we can't make a spaceship out of straw. So I really appreciate that because it allowed me to open my mind a lot more to say, okay, you can do whatever you want to do, kind of thing, which was beautiful. Google really allowed me to have that dream a little bit more. So when I was doing knowledge work for ETO in Google, that taught me strategy, right? That taught me the idea of how sales can be applied on a global level. How you can take a team and put a team in a certain place and then have that team do sales across half a region.
Okay.
So that's what was really fascinating about doing it for Google, because it just showed me, wow, this is interesting. There's like a puzzle piece. If you want to cover a mass amount of space, you don't need just one consolidated team and hire a bunch of people all across the world and plug them into one room in Singapore or Manila or whatever. No, you can actually have small teams sitting across the world and they can cover much more surface area. So that is what I learned from that. And then leaving Google, which was, I mean, there was no real reason for me to leave Google, actually. I just felt like, okay, well, I want to see more, what else is out there.
Oh, wow.
That's when I got into the startup world. So I was director of sales for a inventory management company. Inventory management software company. And that was interesting because I was out of the Google kind of pillow.
Okay.
So, it's kind of like, oh, well, where's our barista? And they're like, no, we don't have a barista. You got to make your own coffee. I was like, oh, okay. All right, great. So do we have laptops? They're like, yeah, you got to go to the store and get the laptop and, expense it back. You're like, oh, okay. So it was just these moments of being like, oh, now it's real, so even though the experience was amazing because of how real it was. That kind of roll up your sleeves element again that I had before going to Google, but when you're in the Google bubble.
Were you like, let me like back?
Never,
No?
never. I was really interested to feel that again and to experience that rolling up the sleeves, do it yourself kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Like I said, all these things had to happen in sequential order, otherwise KONSYG would have never happened.
Wow.
So I needed to feel that. Because if I came straight out of Google and started KONSYG, I think I would have been hiring a barista. Like, we need a barista in the office.
Like more like your expenditure would have been really high because you're trying to like replicate that.
Exactly, replicate a place that is amazing, is where you want to get to, but that's not how you get there, kind of thing. So after that, I left and I was vice president of a med tech company, which is funny because it's right across the street from the inventory management company. And then I went to this, I guess it's a consultancy company, and this is actually what really pushed me to start KONSYG. I was effectively, just in short, very much screwed out of a deal in this company.
Oh, wow.
And the manner in which it was done was really enlightening. Like, I just kind of learned a lot about just business and things that people would do. I was like, ugh, like that's so low that I was like, I would never run a company like that. I would never run a company like these people. And it was funny, as I was doing that, I would never run a company like these people. And then at that point, I'm like, why don't I just start a company? So that's kind of how the whole thing. So it all had to happen in that order. And then even getting screwed, I mean, I almost kind of want to like thank that company, because I was like, man, it just woke me up. It just showed me like, hey, I should probably do my own thing. Because I mean, you learn that you don't need to be smart to start a business. That's what I learned, like, you don't really need to be that bright. So it works perfect, I was like, okay, great. I had the confidence to do it. So then I started it, and then built it up from literally just me and my dog on a couch. That's kind of how it started. So I started KONSYG, which actually, if you look at what the company does, or in terms of the service, it's practically my resume.
Okay.
So it's global. It has a element of my Google experience in it. It has an element of my lead generation company experience in it, my startup experience, and then also our internal culture is very similar to, or it's the opposite of the toxic culture that I saw in that last company.
Okay.
You know, so some of the policies that we have internally, it's very much a combination of all of my experiences kind of coming into one.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it's fully just my idea. I think it's more just my experiences kind of put all
Like
into
an
one.
amalgam of all those
Yeah, it's a
experiences,
medley, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to put it together and kind of put some really key advisors and mentors around me, and also my dad being a big driver of entrepreneurship. I mean, he's
a part of the company as well?
no.
Okay,
Well,
okay.
he is the
Senior consultant?
Yes, he's a senior consultant. You know, he's the one that, you know, when I thought about starting it, I say, I don't know. He's like, what on earth do you have to lose, man? And he's the one who really pushed me over the edge,
Yeah.
you know, to say, just go. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You have all your degrees, everything. I mean, you could always
Yeah.
work again. But why would you even think that? You do all this to work in, you know, your own element. Make the company you want to work for.
Yeah.
You know, and so that in itself was just like, okay, cool, push forward. So KONSYG, I mean, we white label ourselves as we do our work, and you know, at first we were angling towards startups, and what I realized was that the gaps that were sitting in the sales functions of a startup were very similar to the gaps that I was experiencing in larger organizations as well. And because of that, it was a huge opportunity for us because, well, for me at the time, because I was able to kind of piece things together. And then I said, okay, well, all I need to do is just to hire the team, like find some of the best talent I possibly can around the world, convince them to come to this no-name place, and then work for the same places that they were probably working for before.
Okay.
Right? So it was kind of an interesting little switcheroo. And of course, sales culture, you're dealing with salespeople, it's very easy to have that conversation. People are very direct and very open, and you know, you have a lot of A-type personalities and also, I would say, pseudo-Bs, right? Who are like B-type, but they're clearly individuals who would take opportunities, you know? And it was great to kind of get my core team in the beginning. That was within the first year, and then we worked projects. And we were able to take a company from seed all the way to Series A, so we helped the company get to Series A.
Oh, wow.
And that was a big boost to our morale, because then we kind of knew, okay, well, our sales works, right? That makes sense. So,
So how long was how long has the company been
3
around?
years.
3 years.
Yeah,
okay.
this is the third year, yeah. So we scaled up really fast. In the first year, we went from me and a dog to around 30 people.
Like a literal dog.
Yeah, my dog,
Okay.
Milo.
Okay.
My
You
little,
and Milo.
my little Singaporean special local mix. Even my dog's local, right?
Yeah. So now over 100 people right now, you said?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So we're over 100 people now, but we started, I mean, with 30 people within the first year, and then we just kept growing and growing and taking on more complex and really, really fun projects. I mean, for very well-known companies. And another thing about it is that we don't divulge our clientele.
Okay.
That's also our kind of signature.
Okay.
Which is that we don't use our clients to win clients.
Mercenary.
Yeah, it's mercenary, right? So that's a lot of fun because now a lot of our bigger clients have heard from our former clients just at cocktail parties and networking events, and they're like, they're working with you too? Wow, they didn't even say that, you know? And we're like, you know,
That
once
boosts
people...
your credibility, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because if people actually knew our portfolio, I think we'd have a lot of clients right now. If people knew exactly who we've worked with and the projects that we've worked on and what we've done. We'd be very, you know, we could have put it on YouTube.
But would that be like, if you divulge that, then you're losing a competitive advantage maybe? Would that be a thing?
Well, we're losing the competitive advantage, but also a key thing about sales is trust, right? You are trusting a person who doesn't work in your company to be responsible for the revenue of your company.
Yeah.
Trust is key. Professionalism is so important. I mean, you have to be very intentional with your words. You have to be very experienced in terms of knowing not only your client but also the market, and make sure you do what you say you're going to do. Right.
So your vetting process of your employees is like rigorous.
It's more like a secret society more than a company. I mean, we are a squadron of people that are very close. I mean, we have a flat system. There is no rank. You know, I always say there's no rank here. We're all salesmen. We're all saleswomen.
Oh, wow.
You know, it is what it is. Anybody can sell. Everybody's selling, and you know, even our researchers can pick up a phone and sell if they had to. You know, our HR lady can. It goes to sales training internally. We have a really intense sales training program internally that we even refresh every week, right? So we operate more like a platoon than a company.
Okay. Okay. So in Singapore, right? So you're headquartered in Singapore.
Headquartered in Singapore, yes.
Okay. So tell me about the culture here. Like, what is it like running a company within Singapore itself?
Well, I mean, Singapore is perfect for, let's say, a company like mine, like being an outsourced kind of sales and service company, because I deal with the world most of the time. And Singapore is the best place to deal with the world because, one, you're sitting in a very safe environment. Business is very easy to do here. You know, registering. Singapore encourages people to set up companies.
Okay.
It's one of the few countries I've ever seen out of all the countries I've been to that will encourage you to set up a business and try to build it.
Yeah.
Just try to build it. I mean, you know, we always talk about stuff being from America. That's supposed to be the American way, right?
Yeah.
But the chances in how you do that in America is a lot harder than in Singapore, where Singapore says, you're opening a business, do it. So I would say that the environment here is really good for entrepreneurs. And also just living here in general, it takes a lot of the added stresses and maybe added pressures you might get somewhere else off your back.
Okay.
I mean, it's always sunny and warm here, but you know, it's, the weather's consistent. You know, your banks are reliable, the trains are always on time, the taxis are plentiful, and everything's 15 to 20 minutes away.
Okay. Okay, nice.
So
nice.
it's a good place.
So, as a black person, you think it's a good place for a black person to reside? Singapore?
It's a good place for any person.
Any
I mean, I think that if you are black, if you are, you know, white, whatever, I mean, I think that Singapore doesn't really look at that at all. I mean, yeah, I'm a black business owner, but me being called a black business owner has only happened when I'm talking to other black people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting. You know, here you're just a business owner. In Singapore, they really, I mean, it's not the cliche of, you know, oh, I don't see race. No, race is seen, but it's not a part of the conversation of what you do. I'm a man first here, which is great, you know, and then that's actually very valuable to just be a man.
Yeah.
I just also happen to be a black man.
Good person.
Being a man first is something that Singapore really embraces, which I really appreciate. I mean, I've never had a issue at 5 a.m. getting a taxi. I can get a taxi anytime. I can go into a grocery store, not even dressed up at all, like, you know, just out of the gym or with a torn shirt or something, and getting something out of the fridge, and there's no assumption to anything. So Singapore, I would say, as a black person, I mean, yeah, it's very mentally healing here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very peaceful.
Wow. And you've been here for over a decade.
Yes, it's my 10th year.
Wow, 10th year. So you're well seasoned. You understand the system and everything here, right?
Been here a while.
Wow.
Been here a while.
So
I love it here.
Any advice for someone who is looking to start a business? Like, first of all, what's your philosophy? What drives you?
What drives me is really building something that can sustain and be able to help others, and not necessarily in the cliche kind of, oh, I want to make the world a better place type thing. I am more happy at the fact that the people who work in the company make a living off the company than me making a living. And not because I'm some martyr or whatever. That's my kick. I enjoy the fact that something that I came up with on a cocktail napkin with my dog is now, you know, helping other people send their kids to school, or helping people build an extension on their house. Somebody built an extension on their home from KONSYG. And I'm like, wow, you know, like that stuff is super valuable. Yeah, I mean, that's really the key driver. And also, I mean, I do have a passion for technology. You know, I've been involved with tech. I mean, my dad, even though he's superintendent of schools, he's an industrial technology guy. So I was born with an Apple IIe. That was the first gift I ever had as a baby. Like, my dad gave me an Apple IIe when I was born. like
That's
hitting
big.
it, and
That's
I was allowed
big.
to break it. And my mom's like, "What? That's an expensive computer. Why would you let him?" He's like, "No, just let him break it. He's gonna learn it."
Yeah.
You know. So
Wow.
I was able to break and put back together computers. It's like always dealing with a lot of hardware back then, of course. Not
Yeah.
much software, but I was always in tech. So I think another thing that drives me is really just pushing technology forward. Being a salesperson, you are on the front lines of yes and no and market feedback.
Okay.
And you're usually the least appreciated person in a lot of organizations because they just assume salespeople just talk.
Yeah.
There's more to it, right? So you really can see a lot of realities, especially a field salesperson having to go do that boardroom pitch. You can see what happens
Wow.
in the market. So I really want to be able to get that message out there, and that's the key driver, I think, for the whole organization. The reason why everybody's so charged up, we're not really doing it for money. It's
Yeah.
really based on, can we move this needle here?
Yeah.
Or we see in the paper that our client is, getting a Series B. For us, that's the kick, because they don't know, like, hey, we were actually behind that entire operation. We saw these people when they were at a cafe,
Yeah.
and now look at them, they're getting Series B. That's awesome, That for us, I think, pushing technology forward and watching kind of these companies grow to be unicorns is really the driver for us.
Any advice for people looking to enter business, like young people?
Don't enter business for money.
Okay.
Don't say I'm going to be rich or I'm going to make money or things are good. Like, do something that you actually really want to do in terms of what your company is intending to do. Do something that you like, right? The reality is that, and I learned this, just because you start a company doing something that you want to do, you actually end up not doing it at all. You actually run the business and watch other people do the things that you like, but you don't really work for the business. That's the challenge. I started a sales as a service company because I thought I wanted to be on the field
Yeah.
and be selling different technologies and stuff like that. That my job is to sell KONSYG. It's one service, not even a tech.
Yeah.
It's a service, and then I have to run the business. So I'm kind of like that soccer coach who's retired, who's watching all the players on the team and saying, oh my God, I wish I was out there. That's kind of me. So I get to watch my team have the same joy that I had selling tech. But for me, I kind of have to sit back and run the business and keep kind of things moving from a very shell-based. So I would say that for people who are going into business, make sure you set up something that you enjoy doing, but also at the same time enjoy watching. Right? If you get a kick out of it working or whatever it is that you enjoy actually happening, and then you're hiring people and watching them do it,
Yeah.
then it's good because you won't be a micromanager. You're not going to get in the way of things. You're just watching this little plant grow in this petri dish, and it's just growing, and you're like, this is awesome. I remember what it was like to be on the inside of that, but now I'm on the outside looking in, and that's still entertaining for me. So I would say that 90% of this stuff is mental.
Okay.
Setting a business is easy, getting a bank account is easy, throwing up a website is easy, and maybe even getting the first few clients are easy, but to sustain for more than 12 months, to do it every day, it's mental. You have to actually have a real love for it. Otherwise,
So implode.
yeah, otherwise you're just going to set yourself up to, build something up with a goal. We have a lot of people who are building their businesses up just to get bought out or just to get funding.
Okay.
Right? And it's disgusting, right? Because then there's no love, right? They don't love it. They're not even trying to make their business better because they're like, look, I just want to get there. Like, why do you have a goal in mind? We don't have a specific goal. Yeah, we're gonna grow and we're growing, but we enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
There's no like, I need just to get here and then this
enjoy
will
the
happen.
process itself.
Yeah,
of
the process is
work.
fun. I mean, when you're a salesperson, you're in it every day. You're getting told no 100 times in a day, and then that one yes meant everything. So that's something that I would say for people starting up businesses to make sure that they can keep that in mind to sustain. Do something that you actually really care about that you would do for free.
Okay.
And then also realize that you might not actually have to do it yourself. You might also need to just have joy watching other people doing it for you. It's complex, but it's definitely enlightening for me. I'd say.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book.
Or one of your favorites?
Interesting. Actually, a few, because I'm I'm a sales nerd. So cracking the sales management code is one of my favorite like sales books.
Okay.
And then I was just reading the Overweight Mind,
Okay, wow.
which is a book about habit change, and like I just thought that like that book was just fascinating because it brings in spirituality, it brings in habits, it brings in psychology, and it also brings in business all into one book.
Yeah.
So I have a Kindle and I read probably 7 different books at a time.
Okay.
'Cause I have book ADD pretty much. I'll like read like, a few chapters here and I'll just hop to another one. So my book lists are very eclectic. Nothing is the same. So I'll read something like Zealot, which is about, religion, and then I'll go to a sales book, and then I'll go to like a self-help book, and it goes all over the place.
Oh, nice. So any advice for people who are looking to move to Singapore, black people primarily?
Well, I would say just come to Singapore and, black people primarily. I mean, in Singapore, the label, it's healing, right? You're just a person. When you get here, being called black, white, Asian, Hispanic, it doesn't come up.
Yeah.
It really doesn't come up. I mean, it's not a thing. The only thing you'll get is, well, where are you from? Because obviously, you're probably not born here, but maybe you are, right?
Yeah.
So people ask, like, where are you from? You're not Singaporean, are you? That's usually how a local will ask you. They'll say, where are you from? Well, you're not Singaporean, because they have to do that because there's a chance you might be born here. Like, that's literally the environment. So I would say that Singapore is very unique in that sense to where the racial label isn't as on the forefront. So moving here, I think people can see that and feel that really quickly. That's just my opinion.
Okay. So if people wanted to reach out to you or KONSYG, where would they go online?
Great. This is my sales pitch, okay? Awesome. So if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at will@konsyg, KONSYG.com, or you can visit us at www.konsyg.com, KONSYG.
All right. So guys, there you have it. William, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Guys, there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to this channel for weekly videos on the Black experience across the globe. Until next time, bye for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to share your story or have us visit your region, send us a message on any of our social media platforms or via our website.
That's good.